I was told never to say Bloody Mary in the mirror. I just found out the horrifying reason why. Everyone knows the game. Stand in a dark bathroom, light a candle, say her name 3 times while staring at your reflection. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. As a kid, I was terrified of even thinking about doing it. My older cousin told me at a sleepover when I was 7 that a girl at her school had tried it and her face melted off. I believed her completely. For years, I wouldn't even look at mirrors in dim lighting. If I had to use the bathroom at night, I'd keep my eyes on the floor, do my business, and get out without glancing up. My parents thought I was being dramatic. They had no idea I was genuinely convinced that saying those words would summon something real, something that would hurt me. I'm 32 years old now, and I still can't shake that childhood terror completely. Even writing her name makes my skin crawl. But I'm writing this because what happened 3 days ago proved that every single fear I had as a kid was justified. More than justified. I just didn't understand how it actually worked. None of us did. We thought it was about summoning her. We were wrong. It's so much worse than that. I need to back up and explain how this happened. My best friend Natalie has a 12-year-old daughter named Iris, who was having a birthday sleepover. Natalie asked if I could supervise because she had to work a night shift at the hospital and her ex-husband was out of town. I said yes because I'm Iris's godmother and I actually like hanging out with her. She's a cool kid, smart, funny, not too obsessed with her phone yet. The party was supposed to be 6 girls, but one canceled last minute, so it ended up being 5. Iris and her 4 closest friends from school. They spent the first few hours doing normal sleepover stuff, watching movies, eating pizza, painting their nails in colors that made my eyes hurt. Around 11 p.m., they started getting that specific kind of wound-up energy that happens when kids stay up past their usual bedtime. That's when one of them, a girl named Zoe with braces and glasses, suggested they play Bloody Mary. I was in the kitchen cleaning up pizza boxes when I heard them talking about it. Every cell in my body wanted to march into that living room and shut it down immediately. Tell them absolutely not, that it was dangerous and stupid and they needed to pick a different game. But I stopped myself, because what was I going to say? That I, a 32-year-old adult, was scared of a kid's game? That I genuinely believed something bad would happen? I compromised with myself. I walked into the living room and very casually said they should maybe pick something else to play. You know, because it was late and Natalie would kill me if anyone got hurt or scared. They all looked at me like I was the lamest adult who ever lived. Iris actually rolled her eyes at me. It's not real, she said, in that tone 12-year-old's perfect, the one that makes you feel ancient and stupid. Everyone knows it's just a game to scare people. The other girls agreed. One of them, Madison, said her older sister had done it at a party and nothing happened. Another girl, Petra, said she'd tried it alone last month and was fine. They were all looking at me like I was being ridiculous for even suggesting it might be a bad idea. And here's where I made my first mistake. I didn't want to be the uncool adult who ruins the fun. I didn't want Iris to be embarrassed in front of her friends. So I said okay, but I was staying right outside the bathroom door the whole time. If anyone got too scared, they had to come out immediately. They agreed to my terms, while barely hiding their amusement at how paranoid I was being. I watched them file into the downstairs bathroom, all 5 of them cramming into the small space. Iris had a candle from her mom's aromatherapy collection. Zoe turned off the lights. I stood in the hallway with the door cracked open, my heart pounding harder than it should have been. I heard them giggling at first, nervous laughter. Then Zoe's voice, trying to sound spooky. Bloody Mary! More giggling. Madison joined in. Bloody Mary. Their voices were getting more confident, turning it into a joke. They were making fun of how not scary it was. Then all 5 of them said it together, loud enough that I heard it clearly in the hallway. Bloody Mary! Silence. I counted to 10. Waiting for screams or gasps or something. Nothing. More giggling. The light flicked back on and they all came tumbling out, talking over each other about how nothing happened. How it was just a stupid game that only little kids believed in. How I'd been worried over nothing. I felt relieved and slightly foolish. They spent the rest of the night watching another movie before finally crashing around 2 a.m. I stayed up scrolling on my phone in Natalie's living room, checking on them periodically. All 5 girls sleeping peacefully in their sleeping bags. Everything was fine. Completely normal. I went home the next morning feeling silly about how anxious I'd been. Natalie thanked me for watching them and said Iris had a great time. Everything seemed perfect. That was 4 days ago. 3 days ago, Iris started feeling sick. Natalie called me that evening, concerned but not panicked. Said Iris was complaining of a sore throat and had a slight fever. Probably just picked up something at school. I told her to give Iris my love and keep me updated. The next morning, Natalie called again. Her voice was different this time, strained, worried. Iris's fever had spiked to 103 overnight. But that wasn't the concerning part. The concerning part was her face. Natalie said there were these red marks appearing on Iris's skin, like scratches, but not quite. More like, she paused, struggling to describe it, like something was trying to write on her face from underneath the skin. The marks were faint, but definitely there, forming patterns that didn't make sense. I told Natalie to take her to urgent care immediately. She said she was already on her way. I tried to push down the icy feeling spreading through my chest. Kids get sick all the time. Random rashes happen. This wasn't connected to anything. It couldn't be. But then my phone rang again an hour later. It was Madison's mom, Ashley, someone I barely knew. She was calling because Madison had mentioned I was at the sleepover, and Ashley was trying to figure out if any of the other girls were experiencing the same symptoms. Madison had woken up with a fever and strange marks on her face too. I felt my mouth go dry. Asked her to describe the marks. She said they looked like scratches, but when she tried to clean them, they didn't wash off. They were under the skin somehow. Red lines that seemed to be forming letters or symbols. I told her Iris had the same thing. Told her they should definitely get Madison to a doctor. After I hung up, I sat on my couch staring at my phone, trying to convince myself this was just a coincidence. 2 girls getting sick after a sleepover wasn't that unusual. Kids shared germs. Maybe they'd both touched something contaminated. But then I remembered. 5 girls had been in that bathroom. 5 girls had said her name. I called Natalie back and asked if she'd heard from any of the other parents. She said Zoe's mom had just texted her asking the same questions. Zoe was sick too. Same symptoms. Fever. Marks on the face. I felt cold spreading through my entire body. Asked Natalie what the doctor said about Iris. She said they were running tests but had no idea what was causing it. The marks kept spreading, becoming darker and more defined. They'd given Iris something for the fever, but nothing was touching the marks. The doctors were baffled. I called Petra's mom next, got her number from Natalie. Petra wasn't sick yet, but I needed to warn her. Needed to ask if she'd noticed anything strange. Petra's mom, Diane, answered on the 4th ring. Before I could say anything, she asked if I was calling about the marks. My stomach dropped. She has them too? I asked. Diane's voice cracked when she said yes. Said they'd appeared that morning while Petra was eating breakfast. Just suddenly started showing up on her face like invisible ink developing. Petra was terrified and Diane was taking her to the ER. That left 1 girl. The 5th girl whose name I suddenly couldn't remember. I called Natalie back in a panic, asking for the name of the last girl who'd been at the party. She said it was Kennedy. Gave me her mom's number. I called immediately. Kennedy's mom, Carol, answered sounding harried. If you're calling about whatever bug is going around, Kennedy has it too. We're at the hospital right now. I couldn't breathe. All 5 girls. Every single one who'd been in that bathroom. Every single one who'd said her name. What are the marks? I asked Carol, even though I already knew. They're not marks, Carol said, her voice shaking. They're letters. They're spelling something. The doctors can't explain it. I asked what they were spelling. Carol was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mary. The marks are spelling out the name Mary over and over across her face. I hung up and immediately drove to the hospital where Natalie said they'd taken Iris. I needed to see this myself. Needed to understand what was happening. The ER waiting room was chaos. I found Natalie sitting in a chair, her scrubs wrinkled from wearing them for too long. She looked up when I approached, and I saw the fear in her eyes. It's getting worse, she said. The letters are spreading. They let me see Iris because I was listed as her emergency contact. Nothing prepared me for what I saw. The marks had covered most of her face now. Thin red lines forming letters in a script I didn't recognize at first. It looked old, medieval almost. The letters were raised slightly, like scars, and they were still spreading, moving. I watched in horror as a new line began forming on her forehead while I stood there. Iris was awake but groggy from medication. She looked at me with glazed eyes and said, "She's angry we didn't believe." I felt ice water dump through my veins. "Who's angry?" I asked, even though I knew. "Mary," Iris whispered. "She's angry we thought she was a game." A doctor came in then, a young woman who looked exhausted and confused. She said they'd consulted with dermatology, infectious disease, even brought in a specialist from the university. Nobody had ever seen anything like this. The marks weren't a rash or an allergic reaction. They weren't on the surface of the skin. They were forming from underneath, like something was writing on the inside of their faces and it was showing through. And it was only affecting the 5 girls who'd been at the sleepover. The doctor asked me if I knew what could have caused this, if there was anything unusual that happened at the party. I thought about telling her, about explaining what the girls had done. But what would I say? That they'd played a children's game and now something supernatural was attacking them? She'd think I was insane. I left Iris's room and called the other parents. Arranged for all of them to meet me in the hospital cafeteria. We needed to talk about what was happening. When I saw them all together, I could see the same terror I felt reflected in their faces. These were normal people dealing with something that shouldn't be possible. I explained what the girls had done at the sleepover. Some of the parents already knew. Others looked at me like I was crazy. Ashley, Madison's mom, actually laughed. A short, bitter sound. "You think a kid's game did this? That Bloody Mary is real?" I told them I didn't know what I thought. But 5 girls had said her name, and now 5 girls had the same impossible symptoms. That couldn't be coincidence. Carol, Kennedy's mom, said quietly that she'd done research on her phone while waiting. She'd found stories, urban legends and forum posts from people claiming similar things had happened to them or people they knew. Most were dismissed as creepypasta or creative writing, but some of them had details that matched what was happening to our girls. The marks, the fever, the name writing itself on their skin. And in every story, it got worse. Diane, Petra's mom, asked what happened in the stories. How did it end? Carol looked around at all of us before answering. It didn't end well. The marks kept spreading until they covered the entire body. Then, she trailed off. Then what? Natalie demanded. Carol showed us her phone, an archived forum post from 2011. A woman describing her daughter's experience after playing the game. The marks had started on her face and spread over 3 days until they covered every inch of her skin. On the third night, the post said, the girl started screaming that someone was in the mirror, that Mary was coming through. The post ended abruptly. No follow-up, no resolution, just silence after that final entry. We sat in horrified silence, processing what we'd read. Natalie said it had already been 2 days since the sleepover. If that timeline was accurate, we had less than 24 hours before what? Before something came through the mirror for them? It sounded insane, but their daughters had impossible marks spreading across their bodies. Normal explanations had already failed. Ashley asked if anyone knew how to stop it, if there was a way to reverse what had been done. I thought back to all the Bloody Mary lore I'd heard as a kid, different versions of the legend with different rules. Some said you had to say her name 13 times, others said 3. Some versions said you had to spin in a circle. Others said you had to have your eyes closed. But none of them ever talked about what happened if you successfully summoned her, and none of them explained how to send her back. Zoe's mom, Patricia, who'd been quiet this whole time, suddenly spoke up. My grandmother was from Poland. She used to tell stories about mirror spirits, said there were rituals to trap them, keep them from crossing over. We all turned to look at her. What kind of rituals? Natalie asked. Patricia said she didn't remember all the details. Her grandmother had died when she was young, but she remembered something about salt and breaking the reflection, about destroying the doorway before the spirit could use it. It wasn't much, but it was more than we had. Carol suggested we talk to the girls, see if they remembered anything unusual from when they'd done it, anything that might help us understand what was happening. We went back upstairs to the pediatric ward where they were keeping all 5 girls now. They'd put them in the same room so the medical staff could monitor them together. When we walked in, I immediately knew something had changed. The marks had spread further. They now covered the girls' faces completely and were creeping down their necks. But that wasn't what made me stop breathing. It was the way all 5 girls turned to look at us in perfect unison. Their eyes were different, glazed and unfocused, like they were looking through us at something else. She's coming, they said together in voices that didn't sound quite like their own. Tonight, when the moon rises, she's coming through. The parents rushed to their daughters, trying to break whatever trance they'd fallen into, but the girls just kept staring at nothing, their voices monotone and flat. We called her name, and she answered. We opened the door and invited her through. She's been waiting so long in the dark. Tonight she'll step through and we'll step back. A fair trade. I felt my legs weaken. Asked what they meant by step back. The girls turned to look at me then, all 5 sets of eyes focusing on me at once. Into the mirror, they said. Into the dark where she's been, where we'll be forever. Unless, they stopped, their faces showing the first sign of emotion. Fear. Unless what? Natalie was crying now, holding Iris's hand. Unless someone takes our place, the girls said. Unless someone else goes through instead. Someone who knows. Someone who watched. They were looking at me, all 5 of them staring directly at me. I felt my heart hammering against my ribs. I was the only one who'd been there, the only adult who'd watched them do it, who'd let them play the game even though every instinct told me to stop them. This was my fault, and somehow, they knew it, or she knew it. Mary, using their voices to tell me what had to happen. The doctors came in then, alarmed by the commotion. They checked the girls' vital signs and tried to get them to respond normally, but the girls had gone back to their glazed stare, no longer speaking. The marks continued to spread down their bodies. I pulled the parents back out into the hallway. We needed to make a decision. We needed to do something before tonight when the moon rose, whatever that meant. Ashley suggested we destroy all the mirrors in their rooms. If Mary needed a mirror to come through, we'd eliminate that possibility. But Patricia shook her head, said her grandmother's stories mentioned that the spirit could use any reflective surface once the door was opened. Windows, phone screens, even water could become a gateway. We couldn't eliminate every possible reflection. Carol said we should try the salt and breaking the reflection thing Patricia had mentioned. It was the only plan we had. We rushed to get supplies. Salt from the hospital cafeteria. Hammers borrowed from maintenance. We were going to break every mirror in that room and line the doorways with salt. The medical staff thought we'd lost our minds, tried to stop us. But when we showed them what was happening to the girls, the way the marks were moving and spreading on their own, they backed off. Let us do whatever we needed to do. We covered every reflective surface we could find, put sheets over the windows, powered down their phones and tablets, brought in a maintenance worker who removed the bathroom mirror entirely. We poured salt lines across the doorway and around each girl's bed. Ancient protection against evil, even if we weren't sure it would work. As we worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something, that this wasn't enough. The sun was setting outside. The girls had said she was coming when the moon rose. We were running out of time. I found myself standing by Iris's bed, looking down at this child I'd known since she was born. The marks covered her entire face now, spelling out Mary over and over in that strange script. Her eyes were closed, but I could see her eyeballs moving rapidly beneath the lids, dreaming or seeing something we couldn't see. Natalie stood beside me, looking destroyed. "I should have listened to you," she said quietly. "When you said they shouldn't play, I should have backed you up." I told her this wasn't her fault, but we both knew I was lying. It was my fault. I'd been there, I'd let it happen. And now, 5 children were paying the price for my cowardice, for not wanting to seem like the uncool adult who believed in scary stories. The moon rose at 8:37 p.m. I know because I was watching the clock, counting down to whatever was going to happen. The moment moonlight touched the windows, even covered as they were, something changed in the room. The temperature dropped so suddenly I could see my breath, and all 5 girls opened their eyes at once. They sat up in their beds, moving in perfect synchronization. The marks on their skin were glowing faintly now, pulsing with their own light. "She's here," they said in unison. "The door is opening." I looked around frantically for any reflective surface we might have missed, but there was nothing. We'd covered everything. So how was she coming through? Then I saw it. The IV bags hanging beside each bed. Clear plastic filled with fluid, each one reflecting the room in miniature. 5 tiny mirrors we'd forgotten about. "The IV bags!" I shouted. "Take them down!" The nurses rushed forward, but they were too late. The fluid in each bag began to ripple and move on its own, and in the reflection, I could see something that wasn't in the room with us. A figure, tall and thin, with long, dark hair covering its face, standing behind each girl, reaching out with hands that were too pale, fingers that were too long. The girls started screaming. Real screams now, not the monotone voice from before. They were fighting something, trying to pull away from something only they could see. The parents rushed forward to grab their daughters, but the moment they touched them, they recoiled. The girls' skin was freezing cold, cold enough to burn. I watched in horror as the marks on their skin began to tear, not bleeding, but opening, like something was trying to push through from inside, trying to make its way out, or trying to pull them in. Ashley was sobbing, trying to reach Madison. Patricia was screaming for someone to help Zoe. Diane had collapsed next to Petra's bed. Carol and Natalie were both trying to hold their daughters down, trying to keep them from what? From being pulled into the reflection? This couldn't be happening. This wasn't possible. But I was watching it happen, watching 5 children being taken by something that should have been just a story. And I knew what I had to do. I knew what the girls had told me earlier. Someone who knows, someone who watched, someone had to take their place. I pushed past the parents and medical staff, walked to the center of the room where I could see my reflection in all 5 IV bags at once, saw that figure standing behind each girl, reaching for them with those 2 long fingers. "Stop," I said, my voice shaking. "Take me instead." The room went silent. The girls stopped screaming. Everything froze like someone had hit pause on reality. The figure in the reflections turned, all 5 of them turning to look at me, and I saw her face, or where her face should have been. There was nothing but long, dark hair and darkness behind it, emptiness where features should exist. "I was there," I said. "I let them play. I didn't stop them even though I knew. If someone needs to pay the price, it should be me." The figure in the reflections tilted her head, considering. Then slowly, one of the reflections spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing in my head more than my ears. "You opened no door, spoke no name, made no invitation. But I'm responsible," I insisted. "I'm offering myself. Let them go." There was a long, horrible pause. Then, "Very well. A trade. Your sight for their freedom." I didn't understand what she meant at first. Then my eyes started burning. I fell to my knees, pressing my hands against my face. It felt like someone was pouring acid directly onto my eyeballs. I heard the parents screaming my name, but I couldn't respond, couldn't do anything but endure the pain. When it finally stopped, I opened my eyes, or tried to. Everything was dark. Not the darkness of a room with no lights, the darkness of nothing. Absolute blackness. "I can't see," I said, my voice breaking. "What did you do to me?" Natalie's hands were on my shoulders. "Your eyes," she gasped. There's nothing there, just empty sockets." I felt my face with trembling hands. Where my eyes should have been, there was just smooth skin, like my eyes had never existed at all, but I could still feel them somehow, still feel them moving in sockets that were no longer there. "The girls," I managed to ask, "are they okay?" Natalie said yes. The marks were fading. The girls were waking up, confused but alive. Normal. I'd saved them. But the price was higher than I'd understood. Natalie helped me to a chair. A doctor came to examine me, his voice filled with shock and confusion at what shouldn't be medically possible. My eyes hadn't been removed. They'd been erased, like they'd never existed. He kept saying it wasn't possible, even as he stared at the evidence. But that was 3 days ago. I'm home now. typing this on my computer with text-to-speech software that I'm still learning to use. My fingers find the keys through muscle memory and a lot of mistakes that I have to correct. The girls are all fine, completely recovered. The marks disappeared within hours after the trade. They remember nothing about what happened in the hospital. They think they just got food poisoning or something at the sleepover. Their parents know better but have decided not to tell them, to let them forget and move on. I don't get to forget. I live in permanent darkness now. But it's not the worst part. The worst part is what I see in the darkness, because I do see something. Not with my missing eyes, but with whatever sense she left me with. I see reflections. All the time. Constantly. Every mirror in the world shows itself to me in the dark, and in every single one, I see her. Standing, watching, waiting. She's in my bathroom mirror right now as I type this. I know because I can sense her presence, can feel her attention on me. I'll never escape her. Never stop seeing her in every reflection that exists. That was the trade. My sight for their freedom. But she didn't take my sight away. She changed what I see. Now I see only her. Forever. What I didn't tell anyone at the hospital, what I couldn't bring myself to admit, even to Natalie, was that in those final seconds before my eyes were taken, I saw something else in the reflections. Behind Mary's figure, deeper in the darkness of the mirror world, there were others. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. All standing in rows, perfectly still, staring out. I recognized some of their faces from missing person posters I'd seen over the years. Children and teenagers who'd vanished without explanation. And they all had the same marks covering their bodies. The same letters spelling Mary over and over across their skin. They were the ones who'd said her name and been taken. The ones who'd opened the door and been pulled through with no one to trade for them. No one to take their place. They're still there, trapped in that space between reflections. And I can see them now in every mirror. I see Mary at the front, but behind her stretches an endless crowd of the lost. Sometimes they move, shift positions, turn to look at each other with dead, empty eyes. But mostly they just stand there, waiting. For what? I don't know. Maybe waiting for Mary to collect enough souls to do whatever she's trying to do. Maybe just waiting because that's all there is left for them. The night after I got home from the hospital, I heard my phone buzz with a text. I couldn't read it, obviously, but I have it set to read texts aloud. It was from an unknown number. The automated voice read, "Thank you for the trade, but the door stays open. They said my name. The debt must be paid, one way or another." I had Natalie come over and look at my phone. She confirmed the message was there. No idea who sent it or how they got my number. We tried calling it back, but got a disconnected number message. I deleted it, but the next morning there was another one. Same number. This time it said, 5 doors opened, only 1 closed, 4 remain. I felt my blood run cold. I had Natalie call all the parents immediately, check on the girls, make sure they were still okay. Everyone reported their daughters were fine, normal, healthy, no signs of the marks returning, but that message suggested otherwise. Suggested that whatever deal I'd made hadn't been complete, that I'd only saved one of them, not all 5. But which one? And how would we know until it was too late? Over the next week, I got a message every night at exactly 3:13 a.m. Always the same unknown number. Always cryptic warnings that made my stomach turn. The marked ones belonged to the mirror. Reflection debt cannot be undone. They spoke the words. They opened the way. The way stays open. I couldn't sleep anymore. Partly because of the messages, but mostly because of what I experienced during the day. Without physical sight, I'd started developing other senses. I could feel when someone was looking at a mirror near me, could sense when a reflection was being formed, and each time it happened, I could feel her attention shift slightly, feel her awareness spreading across all the mirrors in the world, watching through every reflective surface. She was everywhere, always watching, always waiting, and the messages suggested she wasn't done with those 5 girls, that somehow, despite everything, they were still connected to her, still marked in a way I couldn't see but she could. I called a meeting with all the parents again, told them about the messages, showed them the pattern. They were terrified but didn't know what to do. The girls were fine. Medical tests showed nothing wrong. The marks were completely gone. What were we supposed to do? Tell them they might still be in danger from something we couldn't see or prove. Ashley suggested we take the girls back to Patricia's grandmother's hometown in Poland, find people who knew the old stories, learn if there was a way to truly close the doors that had been opened. But Diane pointed out that would require explaining to the girls what had really happened, telling them about the game and the marks and the trade I'd made. Carol said maybe that was necessary. Maybe they needed to know so they could protect themselves. But Natalie disagreed strongly, said the girls were traumatized enough even without remembering, that forcing them to understand would only make things worse. We couldn't agree on anything. Everyone was scared and desperate and angry, at me for letting them play, at themselves for not being there, at Mary for being real when she should have been just a story. That night, I got another message, but this one was different, longer, more detailed. The one called Iris still dreams of the mirror. The one called Madison avoids reflections. The one called Zoe sees me in every window. The one called Petra feels cold when she looks at her phone screen. The one called Kennedy hears my voice when she's alone. They try to forget, but the mark is permanent. The door is open in each of them. I will come through when the time is right. I immediately called Natalie, told her to go check on Iris, right now. She said Iris was asleep, but I insisted. Something in my voice made her listen. She went to Iris's room and called me back 2 minutes later, her voice shaking. Iris was standing in front of her bedroom mirror in the dark, eyes open but not seeing, staring at her reflection with an expression Natalie described as wrong. When Natalie tried to move her away from the mirror, Iris's skin was cold to the touch, ice cold, like it had been in the hospital. Natalie shook her awake, and Iris seemed confused about why she was out of bed. Said she didn't remember getting up, didn't remember standing in front of the mirror, but her feet were bleeding slightly, like she'd been standing there for a long time. I had Natalie call all the other parents immediately, have them check on their daughters, right now. Every single one reported the same thing. Their daughters were standing in front of mirrors in their rooms, eyes open but not aware, skin cold, feet bleeding. When woken, none of them remembered getting up. They'd all been sleeping, and then suddenly they were at the mirror with no memory of how they got there. We realized then that my trade hadn't saved them. It had only delayed things. The doors were still open inside each girl. Mary was still connected to them, still pulling them toward the mirrors, and eventually she would pull them through. I'd given up my sight for nothing. The girls were still marked, still doomed, still hers. The only difference was, now I could see her coming for them across every reflection in the world, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Patricia said she'd contacted a cousin in Poland who remembered some of her grandmother's stories. The cousin said there might be a way to close the doors permanently, but it required a specific ritual that could only be performed at the place where the door was first opened. We'd have to go back to Natalie's house, back to that bathroom where the girls had played the game, and we'd have to do it during a new moon, when the barrier between worlds was thinnest, but also when Mary's power was weakest. The next new moon was in 3 days. We started preparing immediately. Patricia's cousin sent detailed instructions for the ritual. We'd need specific items: salt blessed by a priest, water from a natural spring, mirrors from each girl's bedroom, a candle that had never been lit, and something personal from each girl that she'd had with her the night they played the game. Natalie still had the clothes they'd worn that night, unwashed in a bag because she'd been planning to return them. We gathered everything we needed. The parents were skeptical but desperate, willing to try anything to save their daughters from whatever was slowly pulling them back toward the mirror world. During those 3 days of preparation, the girls' sleepwalking got worse. They'd wake up in front of mirrors multiple times per night, started talking in their sleep, saying things in voices that weren't quite their own. The marks hadn't returned to their skin, but they were there in other ways. Iris drew pictures of a woman with long, dark hair in art class. Madison started wearing her hair over her face, hiding behind it. Zoe developed a fear of windows. Petra refused to use her phone anymore. Kennedy stopped looking at her own reflection, keeping her eyes down whenever she passed a mirror. They were changing, becoming more like her. Or she was becoming more present in them. The night of the new moon arrived. We met at Natalie's house after dark, all 5 girls and their parents, me with my missing eyes, guided by Natalie's hand on my arm. We gathered in that bathroom where it had all started. The space was too small for all of us, but we made it work. Patricia had the instructions from her cousin. We arranged the mirrors from each girl's bedroom in a circle on the floor, placed the blessed salt in lines connecting them, put the spring water in a bowl at the center. The candle that had never been lit sat beside it. The ritual was complex. Each girl had to stand in front of her own mirror and speak specific words in a language none of us recognized. Patricia had written them out phonetically. Then they had to look at their reflections and see Mary standing behind them, which they all claimed they could. They had to acknowledge her presence and then deny her claim on them, revoke the invitation they'd unknowingly made. It sounded too simple to work, but we had no other options. The girls began speaking the words, their voices shaky and uncertain. I couldn't see what was happening, but I could feel it. The temperature in the bathroom dropped even further. I sensed something gathering, a presence pressing against reality, trying to push through. The girls' voices grew louder, more confident. They were reciting the words in unison now, and I realized with horror that they weren't reading anymore. They knew the words, like something was feeding them the language directly. "She's here," Iris said in that wrong voice. "She's angry. Keep going," Patricia urged. "Say the denial. Tell her she has no claim." But before the girls could speak the words of denial, every mirror in the circle shattered simultaneously. The sound was deafening in the small space. Parents screamed. I heard glass hitting the floor, the walls, felt pieces hitting my legs, and then silence. Total silence. Even the sound of breathing seemed muffled. "Is everyone okay?" Natalie asked, her voice sounding distant and strange. Parents checked their daughters. Everyone seemed physically fine. No cuts despite all the shattered glass. But something felt wrong. The air was thick and cold and still, like we were underwater. I reached out with my other senses, trying to feel what was happening, and that's when I realized. The mirrors hadn't just shattered, they'd opened. All 5 of them. We'd made it worse. The ritual wasn't meant to close the doors. It was meant to tear them open completely. Patricia's cousin hadn't been trying to help us. She'd been helping Mary, helping her find a way to open all 5 doors at once instead of waiting to take the girls one at a time. I tried to shout a warning, but my voice wouldn't work. None of our voices would. I felt something moving in the darkness of the bathroom. 5 somethings, reaching through the spaces where the mirrors had been. Reaching for the girls. Parents tried to grab their daughters but found they couldn't move. We were all frozen in place, able to breathe and think but not act. I felt hands on my shoulders, cold hands that shouldn't exist. And then, Mary's voice, clear as anything, speaking directly into my mind. You traded your sight for their freedom, but you cannot give what was never yours to trade. They opened the doors themselves. They belonged to the mirror, and now the doors are fully open. No more waiting, no more slow pull. Tonight they come through, all 5 at once. I felt the girls being lifted, heard their muffled screams, felt parents fighting against whatever force held them in place, and I was completely useless, blind and frozen, unable to help, unable to do anything but listen as Mary claimed what she believed was hers. No, I managed to force out, though my mouth barely moved. Take me, I offered myself. Complete the trade. You already paid your price, Mary's voice said. Your sight for nothing, a fool's bargain. But I will offer you one more trade. I will give you a choice. The hands on my shoulders tightened. Choose one. Choose one child to go free. The other 4 come with me. Or refuse to choose, and I take all 5. Decide now. The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. Choose one child to condemn the others. Choose who deserved to live and who deserved to be trapped in the mirror world forever. Or refuse and let all of them be taken. There was no good choice. No right answer. Just impossible decisions and suffering no matter what. The parents must have heard it too, because I heard Carol sob and Ashley whisper, please no. But they couldn't speak, couldn't move. Only I could answer. Only I could choose. I won't, I said. I won't choose. You can't make me play your game. Then they all come through, Mary said, and I felt the girls being pulled harder, felt them starting to slip through the spaces where the mirrors had been, into the cold, dark world on the other side. And I made a decision I'll regret for the rest of my life. Wait, I shouted. I choose. Silence. Even the pulling stopped. Choose, Mary commanded. And I said a name. I won't write which one. I can't. But I chose. I picked one child to save and condemned 4 others. The worst thing I've ever done. The worst thing I'll ever do. The chosen girl dropped to the floor, released. The other 4 were pulled through the broken mirrors in an instant. Gone. Their parents collapsed, finally able to move, screaming their daughters' names. The bathroom erupted in chaos. Natalie was crying, holding Iris, who was the one I'd chosen. The other 4 parents were destroying what was left of the mirrors, trying to find a way through, trying to follow their daughters. But there was nothing. Just broken glass and empty space. The doors had closed after Mary got what she wanted. 4 souls for the mirror world. 1 survivor to live with the guilt. I sank to my knees on the glass-covered floor, feeling it cut into my skin but not caring. I'd just killed 4 children, sentenced them to an eternity trapped behind mirrors, all because I'd chosen to save one. All because I'd been too weak to let them all go, or too selfish to refuse Mary's game. I'll never know if I made the right choice. There was no right choice. Only terrible options and impossible decisions. That was 2 weeks ago. Iris is in therapy now. She remembers everything. Remembers standing in the circle of mirrors. Remembers being pulled toward the darkness. Remembers being released while her friends were taken. She knows I chose her. Knows 4 other girls are gone because I said her name instead of theirs. She won't speak to me. Won't look at me even though I can't look back. Natalie says Iris has nightmares every night. Sees her friends in mirrors, standing behind Mary, staring out with empty eyes. The other parents won't talk to me. Ashley sent me a message saying she hopes I rot in hell for choosing. That I had no right to decide her daughter was less important than Natalie's. Carol just sent 3 words. Madison was chosen. Patricia hasn't contacted me at all. Neither has Diane. I don't blame them. I blame myself. Every day, every hour. I made the choice Mary wanted me to make. I played her game and she won. 4 girls are gone. 4 families are destroyed. 1 girl survived but is traumatized beyond measure. And I'm left in the darkness, seeing Mary and her new prisoners in every reflection, knowing I put them there, knowing I chose this outcome. The messages still come every night at 3:13 a.m., but now they're different. Now they're from the girls. I know it's them because the automated voice reads their names before the message. Madison, I'm so cold. Why am I here? Why didn't you choose me? Zoe, I can see you. I can see you in every mirror. I watch you and I hate you. Petra, my parents cry every day. You did this to them. You took me from them. Kennedy, I thought you were supposed to protect us. You were the adult. You were supposed to save us. 4 messages every night. 4 reminders of what I've done. 4 voices crying out from the darkness behind every mirror in the world. And I can see them there, standing with Mary, covered in those marks spelling her name over and over, trapped forever because I chose wrong, or chose right. I don't even know anymore. Iris is alive. That's something. That's everything to Natalie. But it's nothing to Ashley and Carol and Patricia and Diane. To them, I'm a murderer. And maybe they're right. Maybe that's what I am. Someone who killed 4 children to save one. Someone who played Mary's game and let her win. I'm writing this as a warning, but also as a confession. If you say her name, you invite her in. But you already knew that. What you didn't know is that she doesn't just take you. She makes you choose. She makes you hurt people. She makes you become the monster. She made me choose which child deserved to live and which 4 deserved eternal darkness. And I made that choice. I'll never forgive myself for it. But here's the real warning. The thing that keeps me awake. Iris keeps drawing pictures of mirrors in her therapy sessions. Keeps talking about how she can still feel the pull. How sometimes she wakes up standing in front of the bathroom mirror with no memory of how she got there. The marks haven't returned to her skin. But she describes dreams where Mary tells her the debt isn't paid. Where Mary says she only loaned Iris back to the world. Where Mary promises she'll collect eventually. Because doors opened by children can't be fully closed. Because my choice only delayed Iris's fate, not prevented it. Because Mary always gets what she's owed. And Iris, like the 4 others, owes her everything. Check your mirrors tonight. Look carefully. You might see 4 new faces standing with Mary in the darkness. 4 girls who played a game and paid the price. 4 souls I condemned by choosing to save one. They're waiting there, watching through every reflection, waiting for Mary to open another door, waiting for another group of children to say her name and start the cycle again. And when that happens, maybe one of those children will see the 4 girls standing behind Mary and realize this isn't a game. This is real. This is forever. But by then it will be too late. The words will have been spoken. The door will be open. And Mary will make someone else choose. Make someone else destroy lives and live with the guilt. Don't say her name. Don't play the game. Don't look in mirrors at 3:13 a.m. Because she's waiting. She's always waiting. And now she has 4 more souls to use as bait. 4 more faces to lure children into thinking it's all just a game. Until it's too late. Until they're standing in the bathroom wondering which of their friends will be chosen. Which of them will survive. Which of them will be trapped forever. Don't be that person. Don't let it be your choice. Don't say her name. Appreciate you watching this far. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story.